Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sedona International Film Festival. I'm your host Carol Kahn. We are coming to you live from the Sedona Performing Arts Center as well as Facebook Live. And I'd like to introduce to you our filmmaker. Shannon, thank you so much for being here, and please introduce your film.
I'm here with End of the Line, The Women of Standing Rock.
So tell us a little bit about the film.
So you might have heard about the Dakota Access Pipeline, this $3.8 billion pipeline that they rerouted from, originally it was supposed to go through a predominantly white, affluent community, and they rerouted it when there was outrage in that community and put it through the reservation, the Standing Rock Reservation. And so there were 5 women who stood up originally and took a stand, and they took to social media, to Facebook, and said, please come and stand with us. And people did come. At its height, there were almost 14,000 people out there helping them protect their water.
At what point that this was going on did you get involved with this?
Well, I was living and working in Honduras at the time, covering actually a similar story down there. And my parents would send me links to what Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! Was covering. And they kept putting a little bug in my ear that, you know, you should really be here covering this story. This is the type of thing you do. You've been gone a really long time, and you should really come back home. And it got me just like that. So it was a fast process from when I felt like I'm supposed to go there. It was like 48 hours later, I was on the ground going from the capital of Honduras, Tegucigalpa, to Standing Rock. And it was startlingly similar, what I found there, with the oppression, with the violence. And it was just really, at first, sad and disheartening. But I found beauty there as well as time went on, because there was also this solidarity, this sense of community that I have never experienced in my life and probably never will again.
At what point did you find that this story was bigger than you even realized?
Well, the story that I set out to tell was I was going to tell the story of the whole thing, what was happening, and get both sides. And after one day of filming, I realized that, no, this is just supposed to be about the women, because all the interviews I had were with women, because it turned out they were leading the whole thing. And I learned then that in the Native tradition, that the women are the guardians of the water, the protectors of the water. The men are there in support of the women doing that job. And that's because we carry within our bodies, well, first of all, we are water, and we carry within us life in water. And so that's a female job. And so I was really blessed to be welcomed in to the core leadership team and to follow them. I followed them for more than 2.5 years total. And it was clear. Sorry, it was clear. Yeah. I didn't answer your question, did I?
No.
It was clear that it was a big thing from the moment I got out there, just because of the feeling. And even though there were not many cameras when I went out, I just felt that this was a story that needed to be told, and that it would be.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk to you more about the water aspect of it, because it's very interesting to me, but I know that we have a clip that we want to show.
All right.
So let's take a look at that.
All right.
For years, people have fought this struggle, fought for our land and water. And I was at a point where I felt like nobody cared. We're just people from here that stood up and asked everybody to come and stand with us. And they did.
The original pipeline was to go through North Dakota, but it was going through white people's land. So they redirected it, put it through the Indians.
What it all comes down to is wanting clean drinking water for our children.
One family. If we don't stand, who will?
And we are peaceful, prayerful people, but it's come to a point now where enough is enough.
Love is the strongest.
The world is run by corporations now. Who's kidding who? Democracy.
Our prayers would not be needed. This would be needed. Indigenous wisdom unheeded and sacred things depleted.
Are you telling the dogs to bite the protesters?
What is a fossil fuel? Continued destruction, nothing new.
I hear the rubber bullet. I see this one just coming straight for my eye.
Taking our children, shifting their feelings till nothing's true.
How many people know that the United States didn't allow us to raise our own families? We won that right in 1985.
They just put the fear in us so bad with hell and with that belt and with abuse. They'd come after you at night and take you someplace and made you do things you didn't want to do, and you thought it was your fault.
So when people ask, why is this the end of the line? Why are women standing up and saying, no, this is it?
Water is life!
It's because they've seen this happen to their children before.
We're disconnected, these times are hectic and feeling.
The earth is not something we pollute, we take advantage of, that we rape. The earth is our mother.
That's why we walk with prayer. And if that wasn't true, we wouldn't be standing here.
Nobody thought any politician would have the guts. And I just closed my eyes and said, do it.
Have no fear.
We're still going to pursue the legal avenues. I have to leave a footprint.
People, hold your ground. Change is coming now.
The rhetoric is over. It's time for action.
Wow, that is so powerful. And, you know, people lose sight, I think. You know, you brought up a really good point where you said, water is alive, water is sacred. And I think as Americans, people don't value that at all, and they don't understand the issue about water is living, water has memory. It's the same water that has existed over time, and that was from a Lakota Indian woman who basically said, the water that we have here today is the same water that existed over time. It just goes up and evaporates and it comes back down again.
Yes.
And our land is sacred, and people treat it so disrespectfully. And so, here you have a group of people who are trying to have respect and save their land, and what has happened is an atrocity.
Yes, well, bodies of their ancestors were dug up during the digging for the pipeline. So that was a really big deal, obviously, to them. And in terms of water, most of us are blessed. In the US, as you mentioned, we don't have to think about issues with water, and yet there are communities across the country where they don't have safe drinking water. Flint, Michigan, the Navajo Reservation, and many other places where there is this, many say, cultural genocide being committed by cutting off access to clean and healthy drinking water. And that's the source of life. And so this is a really big issue, and it's not just about the natives. This particular river, the Missouri River, 18 million people depend on that as their source of water. And so they were explaining, the women of Standing Rock, that they were doing this for all of us, for all the children and all the people that live along that waterway. And I didn't think about it as much because though I grew up in an impoverished community, it was a white community. And so we had clean drinking water.
Right. I'm with you. Like, when this whole thing kind of started, I sort of paid attention to it, but I didn't really pay attention to it because I didn't really know. And it's almost like sometimes you don't pay attention to things that are not directly affecting you. And then last year at the film festival, there was a film that broached the subject, and the lawyer that was on the case was here, and they showed the whole entire film. But right after that film, my response to that was that I was embarrassed to be an American.
Yes.
And I was so ashamed to have to say that, but watching what took place, that's the reality of the situation.
Yes, and I had a similar feeling, not just about this, but about the boarding school atrocities, the foster care abuse system, the forced sterilization of Native women. These are things that were happening and still are happening. And I went through a long stretch of time where I was just really ashamed of my white skin. And as the women explained it to me, they said, white is an attitude, it's not a skin color. And they invite people to help join them in fighting this, because as they so correctly pointed out, this is an issue that will only get attention if many people from many lands come. And so it was really an awesome sight and an amazing feeling to be out at Standing Rock when 419 Native nations came together, the largest gathering in 125 years of Native Americans and people from all over the world. I met people truly from everywhere, and indigenous people who came and stood up and said, we're facing the same thing in our lands, what can we do here? And part of the reason why I made this film is because the natives know their stories. It's that people who come from a privileged white background do not know them. And so I was hoping to, and I still hope to, reach them and teach them, okay, this is why there are these problems in these communities, and what can we do to serve as an ally, an active ally.
So let me ask you this too, because I know as far as in the Native communities, they don't typically allow anybody in to hear their stories, but they welcomed you, and it seems like more and more that's happening, where more people are being allowed in to see and to hear their stories to protect, you know, basically their heritage. So how did you respond, or how did you feel, or anything that you found out about that?
First, I wondered if I was worthy of telling this story. And then I checked in with myself and got a solid yes, because I was willing to go and willing to do it. I've also documented Indigenous people in more than 70 countries. And word gets out if you do the right thing, word gets out if you don't. And so I already had relationships. And most importantly, my co-producer, Pearl Daniel Means, who is Diné, or Navajo, she helped facilitate some of the interviews in the very beginning, especially when there wasn't as much trust. But it was crucial that I had the trust of Phyllis Young, who was the leader of the Shetty-Shakuin, the largest camp out at Standing Rock. Phyllis is an amazing woman, a lifelong activist, really since her 20s. So 50 years now she's been doing this. And Phyllis entrusted me because I gave the last interview to her brother Russell Means, the activist and actor and a whole lot of other things. I gave him his interview before he passed. And because Russ entrusted me with that, she thought, okay, Pearl trusts her, Russ trusted her, I can trust her. And when her daughter, Washtewi Young, one of our lead characters, she's the one who goes through this transformation and starts looking like a warrior woman with tattoos on her face and colored hair and shaved head. She didn't want to talk to me at all in the beginning, and I understand why. And I take it as a real honor when someone does open up. And Phyllis told her, you need to do this. And so when Phyllis speaks, everyone listens. And I continued to work to maintain the trust. It's an ongoing process, and I wish more people were more thoughtful about how to handle these stories and how to regard people who are different than us, period, because that would help build a lot of bridges, and films like this wouldn't be necessary, quite frankly.
Right, so this doesn't seem like it's the end of the road as far as the story for you.
No, so I've been with these people for 5 years now, and they've become my friends. I follow what they do. We continued shooting long after the pipeline ended. The back end of the film is really what they did. They took their message on the road. The women are now working in the fossil fuel divestment movement, and they are part of a growing global coalition that they, I think, had divested about $12 trillion from fossil fuel projects. Literally, the women in this film fly to Geneva, they go all over the world. Norway was the first. Their bank, DNB, divested from the pipeline, and they were one of the major investors. And it's not easy for the women to get around. They live on the res, they are usually low income, and they pool their money, they cash in their change. They've sold their husbands' hunting rifles, their wedding rings, to get on the floor at meetings where there are people making decisions about what happens on Indigenous lands. And it's really inspiring. If it were up to me, I'd follow them every day, forever.
Well, Shannon, when is the film going to be shown next?
It's Wednesday, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and we're really excited to show it off again. This is only the second physical screening we've had. The first one was here on Saturday. It's wonderful to see the audience's reaction in person.
And how can people find out about the film?
endofthelinefilm.org.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing your work here. Thank you for bringing attention to this subject, and we're just so glad to have you here, so thank you.
Thank you. Follow us on Facebook.
That too. We're on Facebook Live.
Exactly, so good.
Well, we'll be back with more from the Sedona International Film Festival after this.